Hey there, thanks for tuning into my new show, The Restored. Here on The Restored, we have some amazing guest interviews lined up for you, as well as some small group panel discussions. In each show, our goal is to highlight our common yet unique experiences with trauma, recovery, restoration, and how we leverage our pain as the fuel to drive us towards our purpose. And that is to bring God glory. So sit back, relax, grab a tissue if you think you might need it, but get ready for a very transparent and inspirational conversation with today's guest. Let's tune in.
Hi, I've experienced sexual abuse, domestic violence, and corporate trauma as a woman of color. It was not easy to get over the effects of that trauma, but with God's grace, I did it, and you can too. My name is Janeen Cabrera. I'm a self-mastery coach, and I am the Restored.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to have you here. You are now a self-mastery coach. I'm so excited just about that for you. And I know that here on The Restored, we're all about trauma recovery. And when it comes to trauma recovery, we have just an element of self-mastery that has to happen. So I'm excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we always start with our fast five fun facts, right?
Okay.
Can you say it fast? Fast five fun facts?
Probably not. Fast five, no.
Okay.
Fast
You
five,
try.
fun fact.
Fast
There
five
we go,
fun
I got
facts.
it. I need more coffee.
More coffee? Well, okay, so tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay.
What was your first car?
First car was a black Ford Jeep that broke down 3 months later.
3 months later. Okay, your story is almost like mine. I had for those of you that don't know, Volkswagen Jetta.
Okay.
And I think I had mine a little bit shorter. It was 2 months.
2 months.
I saved all my money. But anyway, fast five fun
Yes.
facts. So you've got your first car. It's the
Yeah.
black Jeep.
Yeah.
What's your favorite edible treat?
Chocolate covered raisins.
Okay, you said that with a smile, a big smile.
Yes, I was with them last night.
Okay. And what was your most memorable vacation?
Memorable vacation was South Dakota, which
Okay.
when I say that, people are often surprised. But culturally, I was a teen, and I think culturally it just shocked me. I felt like I was walking into a social studies textbook, and just being able to learn about Native Americans and see Mount Rushmore up close and see the Badlands and bison and buffalo, off the highway was just coming from Brooklyn, New York was
Wow.
culture shock for me.
I can imagine.
And I was like, the rest of the country really is like this. Like, they're not, an urban city. So that was very impressionable for me as a teen. It stayed with me my entire life and just made me obsessed with Native American culture and the Badlands and the West. And I love it. I read
Wow.
books about it now. And
Wow.
yeah,
So put that on your list, folks. South Dakota.
South Dakota.
That's your next destination.
Go to the hot springs.
What is your most memorable and teachable moment that you've had?
Memorable and teachable moment. I have so many, but really, I think that we separate ourselves on the journey, and we think that everything we go through is so unique and specific to us and who we are. And in going through trauma and doing this work, you really do see that we are living such similar, identical problems, challenges, feelings, emotions, beliefs, thoughts. And it really changed my perspective in how I view the world and people around me, where in the past, whether I've held stereotypes or judgments about people or I've seen behavior that I'm witnessing, I'm much less judgmental about what I'm watching and more curious now about the behavior. Where do these behaviors stem from? What is that person going through that led to that? So that I perceive my world from a much different place versus 5 years ago or even 2 years ago.
Wow. Well, that leads us to our last fast five fun facts. Guys, speed up, Jenny. It's supposed to be
Okay,
fast
that was
five.
supposed to be fast. I didn't talk too much.
I know, right? Well, and then what is your personal mantra? Having
My
that
personal
experience.
mantra is push on.
Push on.
Push on. You get beat down in life, and we're all going to have those struggles and challenges, and we want to be in despair and feel sorry for ourselves, but there's no time for that in life. You really do have to push on and keep going, and you'll see that the answers will come or the solutions will come, but it's up to you to take those steps and not surrender in life and not give up.
Wow. So the world that we live in today is going through so much.
Yeah.
There's a lot that people are concerned and anxious about with the current economy, the current market, inflation, the cost of houses, looking for houses, can't find a house, the political climate. There's so much happening. But how is Janeen's heart doing today?
I'm a very optimistic, hopeful person. And I'm one of those, I won't say I border toxic positivity, but I've been told that I do, just because I do believe that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. There's always something to come from it. But my heart is grieving this year. This has been a really hard year for me to just see what's going on in the world. Multiple genocides going on, areas that are in conflict, poverty, inflation, homelessness in the U.S. is at one of the highest rates it's ever been. Layoffs. There's just so much pain going on right now, and it's like everyone you talk to is going through something or another. And it's hard to even remind myself to be hopeful or that God is with us. The things that would normally take me out of my despair, watching the despair of the world, it's hard for me to continue renewing my faith every day and trying to reconcile what I'm seeing in the world and still put on a happy face and know that better times are to come, and that even though I'm witnessing what I'm witnessing, there's always growth from it, and we do learn as humans, albeit slow. It's hard to remind myself of that every day, that this won't be forever and that we will be better after it. It's hard to still remind myself of that daily. So I've been sad. I've had sad days. I feel like it's added to my own stress of how I'm processing my own problems in life. I'm much more melancholy this year than I've been in a long time.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to you for being transparent and honest, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, is because people think that those of us that are on social media, the influencers, that we're not having bad days. But the reality is we're having bad days. We might not post them all because they're not quite cute, right? Who wants to post that? Like, I don't think we need to. No. But I think the reality is we just need to start talking about more our truth. Yes, I have a day where I just sat and cried. Yes,
I just did a post like that this week. I really did.
I think
I don't do it often, but
I think that they were. I think at one time I saw a trend of Transparency Tuesday. But really, every day, we should be transparent with ourselves, with the world, and just be honest about where we are. Yes, we're all pressing forward. Yes, we're all pushing on. But at the same time, while we're pushing on, we have our moments where we have to press. And why are we pressing? Because we're being pushed back. We're facing those obstacles and challenges, and we have to have that fortitude within us to push on and press forward. So thank you for being transparent.
Thank you.
So tell us about your personal ministry. What do you feel your earth assignment is?
I feel called to work with women and children. I've done teen mentoring in the past. I've led youth groups, for at-risk youth in the inner city. Right now, I do feel a strong pull to women's ministry, specifically relationships, relational trauma, healing, and the programming that is all around us, specifically the programming that is ingrained in young women, that sets us up for relationships and corporate America and all the roles that we end up playing within our community, and really guiding women on the programs that rule the world. So
So tell us, what's the backdrop of that? How did Janeen get here? What's your family background?
Well, I grew up in church. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was raised Lutheran. My mom sent us to Sunday school every Sunday, and I was part of the youth group there and went to the ELCA youth gatherings around the country. So my foundation has always been God.
Okay.
And I think that that's what kept me very level-headed growing up in high school and college and even middle school when there was a lot of peer pressure and temptations. I was kind of the mother hen of my group all the time. Always was the one keeping the watch for everyone and
Okay.
would have my fun, but I was really the one who was,
Taking
boring
care.
off to the side, taking care of everyone else. And I think that that is the basis of who I am today. No matter what I do, I'm always concerned about other people, empathetic about people's journeys and problems, and always looking for how I can make my community better. I can make my block better. I can make my job better, my family better. That's always something that is a part of my personality is growth mindset. What can we learn from these things? So I think as I get older and more refined and more disciplined, I keep looking for new ways to challenge myself and to challenge the people who are around me. What's the next level for my family in healing? What's the next level for my community? How can I expand this ministry into something bigger than just my network of friends or just online? What else can be done? So I definitely feel that the call is louder these days.
So when you were younger, little Janine back in the Bronx.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, I'm sorry. I thought you said Bronx, but Brooklyn. When you were growing up, you were in children's church. I don't know if you guys said children's church.
Yeah.
What did you foresee for your life when you were that young?
I always wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I was well on that way. I ended up going to nursing school and doing nursing. I knew I wanted to help people. And as a child, all I really envisioned was a doctor helps people, a nurse helps people, I can help people that way.
A helper.
Yeah, a helper. When I found myself in it, I found that my hands were tied. And there were a lot of situations where I wanted to go above and beyond or do more, and I couldn't. And that was almost painful, physically painful for me.
Yeah.
And it made me realize I did not like nursing. I said, this is not how I wanted to help people. I want to help people on a grander scale. I want to do something bigger, more me. And so it made me go back to school, and I started studying business management, and I knew that somewhere down the line I would have my business that was for people. And it took me a long way to get there. I've been on the journey going through corporate America and learning different industries and developing myself and my own skills and learning about business and economics, and finally am led to where I'm at today, where I'm saying, okay, it's time, time to start postponing this and get the pieces put together and figure out, what is my ministry and what am I doing?
So you got your start within the medical field in nursing, and I kind of feel like those of us that have a heart to help, it's almost like a gift and a curse.
Yes.
Because we have this huge heart to help, like you said, when we start helping, we start realizing there's only so much we can do. There are limitations, and that breaks our heart that we can't do more. So tell us about the shift to corporate America from the nursing arena.
Yeah. Well, while I was in school, I was already working my way as an administrative assistant and learning the ins and outs of corporate America into executive assistant and then director of operations, accounting, HR.
Okay.
So I feel like I've got a good foundation of business and business corporate politics.
Yeah.
I've worked in New York, I've worked in New Jersey, I've worked in Georgia now, so I've gotten a different sense of the culture of states and localities, and some of the similarities and some of the differences that I got to experience, I feel have all prepared me to usher in this new baby that I'm birthing, where I kind of discuss these nuances and the things that I've picked up. And I think that I've always been a good recognizer of patterns and behaviors of people. And so those curiosities were what allowed me to always be in perception mode, perceiving and observing and, reflecting on why things are the way they are and trying to make sense of human behavior and people and how we interact with each other. And
So tell me that you just spoke on something that leads me down this path. What was your most defining moment in corporate America? Having this big heart for help, and now you're in corporate America in the business world.
yeah,
You still got this heart for help, but you're in the
yeah.
business world. So what was your most defining moment in corporate?
My most defining moment was burnout.
Mm,
I think that burnout really taught me that corporate America is just an extension of a relationship.
mm,
The dynamics that we see playing out in our society
mm-hmm.
in personal relationships, romantic relationships, they really do extend into corporate America.
Yeah.
And the same toxicity that we see in our relationships at home exists in the office, and the
Because you
same.
bring your whole self into that environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And belief systems and personality disorders
Mm-hmm.
and all the different things you're working, that people embody. But also the programming, the
Yeah.
programming that we are raised around
Yeah.
within our families, religious, cultural, political,
Mm.
the area that you grow up in, all
Mm-hmm.
of these things, they add to who we are, how our personality develops, how we perceive our world, the belief systems that we develop, and they extend into that office environment. Those same programs that make the good girl or the hard worker or the manipulative person or the brown noser,
Mm.
you see them playing out in high school and
Mm-hmm.
schools and the playground, but
It
now we
happens in
find
corporate.
ourselves in the office world and you're navigating all those same nuances. And so the programs that make a woman work hard or someone be manipulative and competitive, they begin to play out in
Yeah.
the office
It's almost like recess all over
all
again.
over again.
You're back in high school, but you're in corporate America with the same
Yes,
characters,
yes,
right?
yes,
So when you talk about corporate America and trauma,
yeah,
as a woman of color, was there an element of trauma for you?
yeah, absolutely. I think that I don't think, every position I have held in an office environment, I'm usually the only woman of color. Um, I've worked mostly small business, so I like small business startup. I've taken a lot of companies from like, someone's couch into
Mm-hmm.
the corporate office. So in small environments, there's not a lot of diversity. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
like I've worked for hedge funds before, and even in a hedge fund environment, I really was the sole woman of color there.
Mm-hmm.
But in small startup environments, it's often a network of their friends or referrals of, the children
Mm-hmm.
of their friends or family, people who are helping them out. And as they begin to grow, there's still this culture of a lack of diversity,
Mm-hmm.
for a better word,
Mm-hmm.
or phrase. But I often found myself as the sole woman of color in these environments. And so I always felt like I had to work harder. I
Mm-hmm.
always was the lowest earner.
Mm-hmm.
Being in HR, I've been able to see people's salaries.
Mm-hmm.
I was usually the only one who was married, young,
Mm-hmm.
and had a child. I was
Mm-hmm.
already a mom at 23,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else was, in graduate school
Yeah.
or not yet married and
Yeah.
almost pushing 40, had traveled the world. And so, based on my programming of how I perceive myself and others, there's an inferiority
Mm.
sense, an imposter syndrome complex of
Yeah.
have I earned the right to be here? And it's not something that was just a chip on my shoulder. It's something that's also felt from the outside, whether it came via jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I've had CEOs joke with me in ways that I know they wouldn't have joked with other employees,
Mm.
asking about whether I had a baby daddy. There's
Wow.
there's a looseness
Yeah.
that comes with being a woman of color in the workplace where people think that they can regard you in a way
Yeah.
they would never regard your peers and my
Yeah.
colleagues.
Yeah.
And so I learned very young that people were going to push my boundaries and that I had to learn to assert myself to let people know that's not the type of party this is and
Was
hold people accountable.
Yeah. Was there one particular experience that stands out in mind that you feel comfortable talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a CEO who was based in London, and he visited the New York office one time. And ironically, he was the one who let the baby daddy comment slip out when I told him I was
Wow.
a mom. I was married, he wasn't just my baby daddy. And even if he was, it wasn't something that should have been expressed in that way. But then the next day, as I was working, he came over and made a joke and said, it was two women who were in the office that day, an accountant and myself. And he said, why are there dishes in the sink when there's women here in the office?
Mm.
And
Wow.
yeah,
Now you're not just a
yeah,
woman of color with a baby daddy. Now you're a female
yeah,
and you should be washing
yeah,
dishes.
yeah.
Wow.
So that was where I said, all right, this guy has now, that was his second strike, and I'm not going to give him a third. And I
Right.
held him accountable, and I let, the directors of the company know that these things were said and they were totally unacceptable. And,
Absolutely.
he was handled, and, I got to see that my voice
Yes.
had an impact and that I was able to set a boundary with people and hold someone accountable and that the world didn't fall apart. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. But it also let my colleagues know that I was expecting respect. I was
Yeah.
expecting a level of respect that they were all regarded and that I didn't care if I was the lowest person on the totem pole.
Mm.
They were going to respect me as I respected them.
Wow.
So I learned that very young. I was still in my 20s when I had that
Wow.
experience.
Well, just imagine there are women that are in their 30s and 40s,
Yeah,
maybe 50s,
yeah,
that are still in the workplace that still
yeah,
have a fear when
yeah,
it comes to addressing
yes,
workplace harassment
yeah,
like that. Which leads me to the next conversation that I really wanted to have with you. So, and I'm so excited that we get to have this conversation. I'm going to say first, because I
yeah,
had not heard anyone else really just bring the elephant in the room
yeah,
and talk about it. Um, I hear your story as a woman of color, and then I have my stories as a Black woman.
yeah,
And here on the rise, where we are today, culturally, we've made a lot of shifts, a lot of changes. We've evolved in humanity and being more accepting of different cultures and different backgrounds. And I feel like there's now this new, broader term around women of color.
yeah,
But then there are Black women that are, we can be having this conversation and you identify yourself as a woman of color.
yeah,
But me as a Black woman, I'm saying, but I'm a Black woman,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I think that there are sometimes Black women that may be saying, where did this phrase come from, women of color?
yeah,
Our experiences are different.
yeah,
They're very different.
yeah,
How we got to where we are
yeah.
is very different, right? And I'm just excited that you and I have this relationship and that God is all in the midst of it. And He allowed us to have this transparent conversation behind the scenes over a 3-hour salad.
I wish we had cameras there that day.
Right. We just 3 hours bonded like twin flames over salad talking about this very subject. And I felt like it was so healing for my heart and soul. And maybe it was for
Same,
yours
yeah.
as well, just to be open and honest
Yes.
about this conversation. So, trauma.
Yeah.
The Latino community, Asian community, Indian community, I think like there's this broad identity as women of color. But then when you talk about Black women, we immediately go to, but we came through slavery.
Yeah.
We had our family stripped apart.
Yeah.
We've got this whole experience where we're not even considered a whole person,
Yeah.
in the Constitution.
There's
right?
even gatekeeping on women of color now.
Right. There's even gatekeeping on that. And so I wanted us to have the conversation publicly so that we can begin to reconcile where the differences are and begin to bring that conversation together so that if there are, thoughts in your mind behind the scenes, if you're watching this, we can begin to have this conversation and feel more comfortable with being honest about what our real thoughts and feelings are. Right?
Yeah.
So with you being a woman of color, me being a Black woman, how do we begin to talk about who's who,
Yeah.
what's what, and what the real goal is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our backgrounds and our journeys aren't the same,
Yeah.
but I feel like the goal is still the same.
It's a hard topic. I really dislike labels.
Yeah.
I feel that labels separate us.
Yeah.
However, women of color, I think, is a uniting phrase. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like a uniting phrase when you
Mm-hmm.
hear it.
Mm-hmm.
It encompasses so many different types of women from various backgrounds and cultures, different shades of skin. But what I found is, especially as I became a writer and I searched for places for women of color,
Mm-hmm.
I found that there's a lot of gatekeeping on which groups
Which
I was able to access.
Yeah.
So for authors, there was a woman of color campaign where they were highlighting new women of color authors, and I submitted my work and my photos and my bio and everything, and I got an email back saying, "We're so sorry, you are a woman of color. However, this specific campaign is just for Black women."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay, no problem,
Yeah.
understood. Everyone has the right to make a place for their own group of people."
Right.
I truly do believe that we should all be able to do that. That's part of our humanity.
Yeah.
However, in my own experience, working with women of color and thinking that there was some kind of solidarity there, you often find that people are positioning themselves very quickly with different levels of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as we grow up, that is what we begin to learn, especially in corporate America, is that there are programs that rule our world. There are programs that dictate
Mm-hmm.
code in the workplace, in society, with racial backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on those codes, everyone is in a race to align themselves with some sort of privilege. They're all trying to access capitalistic privilege, racial privilege, privilege within the patriarchy. And for women, we are raised with this scarcity mindset. We're raised that there's only so many suitors. We have to, fight for these suitors. There's only so many positions.
Right.
And so from very young, we learn to kind of be pitted against each other. We learn that there's not enough for all of us.
Yeah.
For women of color who are getting into positions of privilege or who have a specific privilege, like maybe you're beautiful, maybe you speak really well, maybe you come from a really good family, maybe you're lighter skinned or your hair texture is better, and so you assimilate better to privilege. You're accepted easier in certain environments in corporate America. And people will learn to use their privilege in whatever way they can to continue accessing new levels of it. And there can be a sense of gatekeeping there, for women who are lighter, Latinas. You think that you see someone in a leadership position and that maybe you would have an opportunity there, but in fact, that can be a bigger stumbling block for us
becomes your arch nemesis.
It's like there's only enough room for one of us here.
Right.
Only one of us can be here, or I fought to get this position. I'm not going to make your experience easier because I had to go through hell to get to this position.
Wow.
Where it really should be about all of us understanding how these programs work and how this privilege works, accessing the privilege, and then reaching out and saying, okay, let me now help someone else access this privilege that I've accessed. But instead we gatekeep, or we pit ourselves against one another. We talked a little bit about the Latinas and Blacks working in office environments, where we both are women of color. Because Latinas can access a different level of privilege, they will. And so instead of us being supporters of one another, there's often been this tension between Latinas and Black women. And so I have found that when I moved to Atlanta, Black women are the ones who are doing the most down here. They are graduating at the highest rates. They're starting businesses at higher rates than any other women. They are buying homes at higher rates than any other group of people. And so that is the environment that I've now moved into. I've moved to a state where Black women are at the top of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's different from New York, where New York, there's a bigger diversity of business where I'm trying to access. Here, as a Latina, I'm coming in, I see myself as a woman of color. I see myself with the same levels of oppression that other women of color have. But the darker you are, the more you will sense that your oppression is worse than someone else's who
Yeah.
has access to different privilege. And so because of those obstacles that we come against, it forces us, or it trains us, it programs us to then say, there's not enough for all of us here. And now I have to pit myself against you. And
Wow.
I have to make this harder for you to enter this world of business here.
Yeah.
And I see it. And I do get a lot of feedback, even from you. You were able to open up and be very authentic and vulnerable with me about your experiences working in corporate environment with Latinas. And I have to acknowledge that you're not the first person who's told me those things. And so I can see why we don't play well together, but we should, because at the end of the day, we are both oppressed by the same racial programs that govern the world.
And that's where I want us to really get. Yes, we've got slavery as a background. Yes, we've got, you guys have the border issue as a background. Whereas, people from India, people from Asia, they have their issues.
And I've had Asian women tell me they consider themselves women of color. That they do not align with white assimilation, that they feel ostracized or oppressed in work environments as well.
Right.
Or in romantic relationships as well.
Right.
So it really does show that the spectrum is so broad, and yet, for each one of us, we all feel like we just see what's before us. Our own oppression.
You're absolutely right. And instead of us like keeping this line, that separates us, I think that it's time to begin to have a greater conversation around reconciling, doing away with the labels. I love the fact that you hit on that because it's the labels that keep us separated. We've got Kamala Harris running as the first Black female to run for president since Shirley Chisholm. But you would think after Shirley Chisholm there would have been more women to step up.
Doors opening.
But look how many years have passed since a Black woman has even dared to step into the office, to dare to even put her name on the ballot. Right?
They have us programmed so well to not even
there are systems in place. And so reconciling those differences, doing away with the labels, I think is what will help us to accelerate and see the growth and the progress that we're looking to see. Even though our backgrounds are different, the goal is the same. The goal is to get access. It's access that we all need, despite our color, despite our background, despite how we got here. The goal is the same. I think that we can really begin to add value to this conversation if we keep having it. The minute you feel that, pull that person to the side and say, hey, can we have a conversation? And I think that as we become more transparent and start having that conversation, when we see that line drawn and that wall up, we begin having that conversation. I think we can begin to pull those walls down one by one.
I've reflected on that as well. Do you address these issues when you have them? Do you try to resolve the issues with coworkers? Does it create a bigger issue? Does it create more tension? Does it add to the problem? And what I find is that everyone is so programmed that addressing the elephants in the room or trying to change the culture of a workplace or the dynamic is self-sabotaging. And as a woman of color, I think that is the most disappointing part of business that has turned me off towards corporate America and climbing the corporate ladder and chasing this VP position that I thought was, where I was headed and where I wanted to be in my career path. I'm realizing that it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it really is a game, and the people who get to the top of it are the people who play the game well. They're the people who know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. There's a refinement with being aware of your behavior, the tone that you're speaking in as minority women. We have to be so careful about our tone.
Yeah.
You know, the things that our peers can say,
Mm-hmm.
we are not afforded
The same luxury. Yeah.
luxury to just speak our mind or to check people in the way that our peers do. So, you know, the solution in my mind is that more of us need to get to these positions, more of us with this type of thinking.
Yeah.
The conversation needs to happen before we fill these roles and these positions, so that there's a new programming going on with the new generations coming in behind us,
Absolutely.
the younger women entering the workforce. I want those women to be aware of what they're going to come up against. Yeah. The men in power, the locker room dynamics that go on in a workplace, you know, hedge fund environments, you know, what does that look like? You know, all the beautiful women that'll be hired in those work environments. These were all things I learned as a young woman, you know, yeah, why I got this job or that job. But I think if we prepared young women better and help them to understand the program and mm-hmm. how these politics work and how to navigate them mm-hmm. and how to open doors then for the people behind us, that's where the change is going to happen. Because programming is so hard to rewire. Yeah. And for people who just don't have awareness or yeah. have no desire to change or a reason to change, mm-hmm. they're not affected. They're not oppressed in that way. Yeah. They don't see the benefit to it. Why should they change? Right. And so you end up spinning your wheels and spending all this energy on trying to change the system that is. But yeah. the work really has to just be, how do we start programming these younger girls coming in yeah. and aligning ourselves with women like you and I that do share the same yeah. mindset yeah. and say, okay, we can foster a community of women like us yeah. who are leaders in our communities. We're business women, we're educated, we're wise, we're smart, we know what we bring to the table. How now do we start creating a strategy for ourselves to navigate the things that we've come up against?
I love it. I'm here for it. I even feel like I want to have you back on the show again, because I think like this is a conversation that needs to continue yeah. to happen. Yeah. And we can be here 3 hours again all day. Oh my goodness, they literally, I think they should have just put us out of time. But we could be here all day. But before we get ready to close, yeah. I want you to just take a moment and look into that camera. There are other women. There may be men of color yeah. versus Black men. Yeah. Take a look in the camera and encourage that person that may be struggling with their sense of identity, yeah. struggling with their place in today's market, mm-hmm. and are looking for the tools and the answers as to how to move forward. Yeah. That camera.
I want to remind everybody that we really are all living the same struggles. There's not any insecurity or challenge that really is so unique to you. The things that make us feel like we are failing. We are failing in life. We're not where our peers are. We're not where our siblings are. You know, we don't feel good enough. Relationship-wise, we feel like we don't navigate them well. We really are so similar in our thinking, in our insecurities, in our anxieties and depressions. And the more that we learn that it's okay to be authentic and vulnerable, the better off we will all be together. We will learn that this human experience is hard. It is an experience of a lot of suffering, because that's what refines us. That is the clearing of the dross that's within us. Mm-hmm. It's through that pain, it's through those struggles that we learn who we are, that we learn new capabilities. It's where we find our purpose. Once we navigate ourselves through these challenges, we have different answers that come to us. Our brain and our mind is expanded. And the brain is an amazing, amazing mystery that we are just touching the surface on. And we're just learning now how the brain works, how it perceives its world, how the feelings that we have about ourselves, who we are, our self-concept, how all that is developed in our childhood. And where we thought before, you know, with even mental health, the strides that we're making in mental health with trauma and brain development and subconscious reprogramming, we're really understanding now that the sentences that we had before of I'm bipolar, I'm ADHD, I have personality disorder, I'm severely depressed. We don't have to live a life sentence of these diagnoses.
That's good.
There is so much understanding now of how to reprogram the brain, how to reprogram the mind, how to soothe the body. And this is what the journey really is about. It's about unlearning everything that damaged you in childhood and learning now all the things you want to learn to be the person you feel called to be in adulthood, and navigating yourself through that and finding your way through that, and then reaching back and helping the next person do it. And that is the purpose. We make life so much more complex than it really is intended to be. So many of us feel lost. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be learning. You're supposed to be getting better. You're supposed to be helping others. And that's the simplicity of life. If we can remind ourselves of that every day. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to cry. It's okay to melt down today. Let me get back up. Let me push on. What can I learn today? And now who can I help tomorrow? That's good. If you just focus on those things, you will live a good life.
That is amazing. Janeen, will you come back on the show?
Absolutely.
Can we schedule a follow-up call, conversation? We will definitely do it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for starting an amazing and important conversation with me and with my viewers.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for doing the work.
Thank you for doing this. I mean, you yourself are such an inspiration of what you're doing and platforming for people, and you are a perfect example of obedience, and you remind me that when God calls, you're supposed to answer and not drag your feet and not take 3 years. It's scary to answer the call, but Kimberly's doing it, and she's pulling other people who are being called into their purpose. And so thank you for helping me live my purpose.
So much for saying that. You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much, Janeen. We're going to have you back on the show real soon. So you'll be looking to hear from me.
Yes.
And would you say that you're restored?
I am restored. I am restored and healing every day.
Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, Janeen.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing conversation. Thanks for tuning in today. If something was said here that has inspired you or your relative or a friend to keep moving forward in spite of the challenges that you're facing, or if you just needed a little extra push to continue to have hope, then our mission has definitely been accomplished. The Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians 3:16, I pray that God will unveil within you the unlimited riches of his glory and favor until supernatural strength floods your innermost being with his divine might and explosive power. You've got some power on the inside of you, but you've got to believe it. And once you believe it, your entire outlook on life will change. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Like the video, share it, and subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. And I want to remind you of this. You too can be restored to power.